Hello, everyone that just joined. This is David and Larry here at BHMA staff. It is 12:30 p.m. Eastern time right now. We're going to give the group a few more moments as we're seeing a few more dial in, and go ahead and kick things off in just a few moments. All right, everyone. Again, thank you all for your participation and time today. Myself, David Bernstein, Larry McLean here at the BHMA staff, and we also have our technical development team on the line here. And again, just want to thank you all for your time. Today's certification portal CPD update is going to be primarily focusing on the manufacturer user side of things. And I'm going to go ahead and move along here. Let's get to our next slide. So for today's agenda, we're going to provide a brief background of where things were with the previous CPD, where we're going to be going with it and how we're going to get there. Also going to be providing a nice brief overview of the newly designed certification portal. Again, touching on the user types, responsibilities, access, things of that nature. Again, focusing on the manufacturing side of things. And we'll be also providing a deep dive walkthrough, if you will, of the website navigation. Towards the end of the agenda here, we'll be talking about the workflows specifically related to the submissions. Again, from the OEM manufacturer side of things, talking a little bit about private labeling and also the recertification process. And then lastly, we'll provide a little bit more overview on the resources, next steps moving forward, and the timeline as things are currently right now. So to try a little bit of a brief background, if you will, as most of you are aware here, this is what the current certified products directory looks like. Very brick and mortar, if you will, search engines, things of that nature. Kind of going off of that, these are what some of the product listings look like in their PDF format. But moving along here, in terms of our redesign or re-engineered, if you will, certified products directory benefits, certainly, night and day almost, right? Really touching upon increased searchability to allow for a more detailed, accurate, consistent, and searchable database, really providing the opportunity to locate specific products, based on the manufacturer, standards, product name, model number, and so forth, really just giving an intuitive approach here. And then certainly, one of the most top of mind features here and benefits is a streamlined data management approach here. Really had the opportunity to implement a really industry-leading SQL relational database structure, really allowing complete streamline, automation, if you will, increased overall operational efficiency, really on both the back end as well as the front or public-facing side of this program. And lastly here, we're really building for the future, right? So we're trying to create a system that's built for growth, built for scalability, and is extremely manageable and very easily to use, when there's a higher volume of product listings and participants from now and again moving into the future. So again, as most of you are aware here, this is a brief overview of all the necessary steps involved in the current certification process. So you should be fairly familiar with that. With the introduction of the new Certified Products Directory, these are some of the newly designed steps here. And just to highlight a few, we have introduced rather some additional steps in the pre-submission process. Most top of mind here is review of the operational manual has been updated and the signing of the licensing agreement. And of course here, if you haven't yet done so, the requesting action here of accessing to the certification portal as well as the member database, because those two programs are intertwined and connected with one another. Going kind of off that, manufacturer user really adds product data to the new submission and submits it through the new CPD. That functionality wasn't really there previously. The test lab, from that perspective, they will review the product data submitted by the manufacturer, and they'll also, really be able to approve or request the manufacturer revision through that interface web application. Another new step here is, once the test lab user affirms the submission, the proposed listings and test report, it will be queued up for the BHMA staff user review, also housed in the web-based application. And then also, BHMA staff user reviews submission, and they'll be able to prove that through the web application. And you'll be able to see the status updates of the process of your submitted listing housed in that web application. Essentially, CPD will be able to track expiration of the certified products based on the initial certification date and any revisions standard. So kind of looking at from a holistic perspective with the CPD, the old system, there was a lot of different steps in communication housed all over the place, right? Different channeling, things of that nature. With the new certification process, really kind of presenting it from a perspective of enterprise resource planning, which is automation, really, and streamlining approach, all housed in a single platform. So we feel as though this certainly will impact the user interface, reaction, end user for both the test lab, OEM manufacturing side, as well as BHMA staff for improved version. So we're very excited and happy about that process. And then just to kind of give you kind of, again, a holistic approach here, fully encompassing, if you will. So for the project scope, all of these concurrent BHMA projects are really interconnected and related and rely upon each other. First and foremost, we do have the member database, really, again, just storing information about BHMA members, anything from membership status, contact information, and payments, really foundational to the product database and submission portal. Submission portal, also known as the certification portal here, really just a great mechanism to allow for users to interact with the database. Manufacturers will use it to submit their product data for storage in the database, and it's accessible in any browser, really. And of course, the product database, again, that stores certified product data and administrative information, foundational both to the submission portal as well as the public-facing side of the Certified Products Directory. And I'll note here with the public-facing side of the Certified Products Directory, that hasn't officially been launched yet, and we'll certainly plan to do that at a later date once we have all of A156.1 product listings that have been submitted through the new submission portal and are confirmed up to date. So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation toward the latter half, but again, once we've been able to populate that information with A156.1 submission portal, we'll then have that rubric or skeleton, if you will, to really publish that out. Then I'll go ahead and turn the attention over to my colleague here, Larry.
Okay, so we want to move right along to logging in. As David mentioned, the certification portal as well as the member database are connected, and what that allows is for a single sign-on in order to access the certification portal. So it begins with logging in. You should have received an email informing you of the new BHMA website, and the login is at the upper right of the buildershardware.com homepage, and you can enter your email and your password. If you don't have an email a password, or you forgot your password, you can always hit the reset button, and they will send you a link for you to reset your password. Once you get to that page and you're logged in, then you want to go to where it says My BHMA, and again, that's on that top menu bar. You want to click My BHMA, which should give you the option to click on My Profile. Now, BHMA members may see other options, but everyone, whether you're a BHMA member or you only participate in the certification program, you'll have a profile so that we have information on you and also can give you access to the certification portal. So once you click on My Profile, you want to go and check it out, and you want to make sure that the information on your profile is correct. You'll see that there's a place, if you like, you can always, so you'll say that if you like, you can always add your photo. You want to make sure that your information is correct. Excuse me. You want to make sure that your information is correct on there. And also to mention, you need to be able, in order to be able to access the certification portal, you have to be a CPD certification management contact for your company. So if you go on the organizations, tab, then you'll see that there's a list of different relationships that you have to your company. And if you are listed as a CPD certification management for your company, then you'll have access to the certification portal. If you are not listed as CPD certification management, you will not be able to access the portal. And if that's the case, then what you need to do is you need to contact BHMA so that you can gain access. In the future, you'll be able to contact a representative, a designated representative from your company, and that person will be able to give you access to the website. Okay, we're going to go ahead and hand over to Erica and DNR.
Hey Larry, it looks like I'm listed on the GoToMeeting as caller 24, so if you could pass the presentation to me. Tried to change my name, but it didn't work.
All right, we are just transferring it over to you in just 1 second here, trying to find the long list of attendees.
In the meantime, does anybody have any questions before we move on directly to talking about the certification portal?
Looks good. You guys are doing a great job. Erica, how did you get to be number 24? We've always held you at a much higher level.
Must have been a little slow on the dial today, Chris. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes. Got it here.
Yes.
I can see it.
All right.
I was looking at the email that you guys sent, and I didn't see any login information in there. I was going through as he was presenting, but I didn't see the login. Does that mean that I use the same login as I had before? Is that why I didn't get it?
Hi, again, you can always click the reset password, and they should send a link to your email, and you can always then change your password from there. If you have any difficulty, you can always contact me. That's Larry L. McLean at kellandcompany.com, and I'd be more than willing to help you.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go through the certification portal, and part of the way through, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Tyler. Once again, my name is Erica Burns. I work for DNR International, and we have been working very closely with Larry and David at BHMA, as well as the BHMA Certified Product Directory Task Force to develop this entire system. And I'm very excited today to be walking through it with everyone, especially people who have been involved for the entire time, but also people who this might be your first introduction to this new system. I'm happy to answer questions as they come up, so feel free to just speak up if you have a question immediately, or feel free to wait until the end if you prefer to do it that way. If we get a lot of questions during the discussion, we might just say, okay, we're going to pause it and wait until the end just to make sure we can get through everything. So the first thing that I wanted to cover, we've had a couple of questions about this in the past. Just want to make sure that it's very clear to everyone that when you're using this system, you're welcome to use whatever web browser you normally use. I would just recommend that you make sure it's all the way up to date. I prefer to use Google Chrome personally, but we don't expect to have any problems using Firefox or Internet Explorer or whatever other browser you might be using. So as Larry mentioned, the login for the certification portal, which we're talking about today, is directly linked to your login for the BHMA website. If you are just going to buildershardware.com, there's a login button up at the top right of the page. But if you want to log in and go directly to the certification portal, you can just navigate to certification.buildershardware.com. And that's the link that's on the slide right now. So like Larry said, you have to have all the correct settings in the member database before you can access the certification portal. So if you're going to this page and you're trying to log in and it's giving you some kind of error message, I would recommend that you double check to make sure that you have all those correct settings so you have the right access. So the first thing that we want to cover today, just to be clear on who's using this system, so we're going to talk about the user types and roles. This system is intended for use only by manufacturers, test labs, and BHMA staff. So as David mentioned earlier, this is not going to be the public-facing place where a customer or some other stakeholder will be looking up certified products. This portal is intended only to be used by these three user groups for the purposes of submitting, updating, and editing any data that's associated with your product. BHMA at a later time will be working on how to pull this information that's being stored in this portal and database into a public-facing version on their website. But again, that is the process of being developed and is not part of the discussion today. So at a very high level, manufacturer, who I expect most of the people on the call today are, your role as a manufacturer user is to create and submit submissions. So I know the term submission is going to be a new term for you, and I will talk about that in a little bit more depth shortly. But essentially what it is you're submitting a group of products together to be certified. A test lab user is your test lab, so either Intertech or UL, who has done the testing on your product. And their role here is to either approve or reject the submission that has been created by a manufacturer. And then the BHMA staff are doing a similar role. They're just approving or rejecting submissions once they've been approved by the test lab. So I'm going to talk you through the basic navigation of the website. It's fairly simple, I hope, for everyone. We have essentially a home page. So once you log in through that certification.buildershardware.com login page, it should redirect you to a home page that will basically show you all of the submissions that need your attention in some way. So when you first log in, it's probably going to tell you there aren't any submissions to display because you haven't created any at this point. But if later on down the road, once you have started using the system, it might look something like this. So the way that we've structured the homepage is we don't want to bombard you with too much information that isn't pertinent at the time. So it is looking at submissions for you that need your attention because they were rejected, for example, they're recently certified and the system wants you to know that the process is complete. And so they're either rejected by the test lab or BHMA staff, in which case you'd have to edit them and resubmit, which I will talk about, or Tyler will talk about a little bit more later on. That's the home page. We have the submissions page, which is essentially very similar to what the home page is. It's just going to show you all of the submissions that are associated with your organization, regardless of their status. So if you have a submission that you created earlier and saved as a draft, it'll show up there. It's going to show pretty much everything you might possibly want to see in terms of submissions. You can change the view, so you're viewing 10, 20, 50, or 100 submissions at a time on a page. It's just a high-level overview of the submission. And you can always click on one, and then it will show you a summary page that has more information about that particular submission. And then finally, we have the products page, which is very similar. It's just showing every individual product. So I'll talk a little bit more about this shortly, but a submission could have one or more products associated with it. And one thing I didn't mention is that on all of these pages, we have sorting options. So if you click on the column header, like brand, for example, it'll sort it alphabetically. That's just one way to help you find things. You can also use the search bar at the top of the page to search for a particular product. And then one last feature I wanted to highlight is the download button that we have on both the submissions and the products page. If you are looking at a set of products, you can always click the download button, and that will download into an Excel file that you can then do whatever you want with it. If you prefer to look at things and filter them in Excel, that's a good way for you to do that. And then you can also use that drop down to the left of the download button where it says view status. You can filter all of the submissions or all of the products based on their status, and then once you have it filtered, you can download it, and it should only download the products that have that status. So if what you're trying to do is maybe talk to a customer and say, I want to tell you all the products that I have certified, you could sort by, or you could filter by status of certified, download it, and then you have it all in an Excel file. Okay, so that's just the basic navigation. I'm sure you guys have some questions, but I think once I get through the first part of the submission workflow, hopefully that will resolve a couple of them. So like David mentioned earlier, the new system has a slightly new workflow from what you're used to when you get your product certified. So what happens is in the beginning, the manufacturer, which is most likely you who are on the phone, you'll be responsible for submitting your products for certification through the system, and we'll walk you through the detailed steps shortly. The next step is the test lab either approves or rejects it. If the test lab rejects it, it will be sent back to you to edit and resubmit. If it's approved by the test lab, it moves on to the BHMA staff review. They're essentially checking to make sure that you paid all the appropriate fees, and they will go ahead and approve it. And so at this point, if the BHMA staff approve it, it is then allowed to be considered certified by BHMA. It sounds like we have some holds. Hey, Larry. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so the product has to undergo full review by the test lab and BHMA staff in order to be considered certified, at which point you can start labeling, marketing your product as certified, and the system will automatically cause the product to expire in the system 4 years from the date of the test report. Okay, so coming back to the question of what is a submission. This might be very unfamiliar for some of you, so I'm going to try to break it down in a couple different ways to help align some of the terminology you might have used in the past with what we're talking about with this current system. So essentially, a submission is equivalent to a test report that has been created by your test lab. So in some cases, you might have a family of products, which we are calling the brand series. That family of products or brand series could encompass multiple test reports or not. It could either be you just have that entire family is all on one test report, so it's just one submission. In a different scenario, you might have 2 different test reports, like you can see on the slide here, in which case a family would have to be broken out into 2 separate submissions because they're listed on 2 separate test reports. So on a test report, you can also have one product or multiple products. So in that top right green circle, we have an example of a test report that just has one product. What we're calling a product in the context of this system is essentially a single unique brand function number and or ANSI number. And I will talk about the ANSI number shortly, but hopefully that terminology makes sense to you as a manufacturer. So it's just a single function. And then in the other example, you can have potentially more than one product that's listed on the test report. So you could have a submission that has multiple products on it. And obviously there are going to be different scenarios depending on the manufacturer, depending on the test lab that you work with and your recertification and retesting cycles. So we tried to make the system as flexible as possible to account for as many of those situations as possible. Okay, before we move on to each of the types of submissions, does anybody have any questions that they want to ask?
This is Dave Case from Dormacaba. Can you go back to the last slide, please?
Yes.
I just was curious. We're not changing the idea that all functions have to be tested for a particular series. Is that correct? Because I'm seeing on here that a submission is one product, one brand function number, and the ANSI number. Currently we test one product within a family, one particular function, and that covers that family.
Right, so I'm obviously not the expert on the standards or the testing, so somebody else might be a better person to answer this. But in terms of this system, we're not changing any of your testing requirements. We're just changing the way that you have to report the products themselves.
Good enough, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think the image below emphasizes that. So Dave, having been on the task group, nothing is changing, which is why you can submit one product, one test report, or you can submit many of them as shown in the different examples here.
Right, but I would only be, okay, I got you, I believe. As long as it hasn't changed, I'm not going to try to pick apart what I'm seeing here. I just want to have an understanding. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure this is going to be a bit of a learning curve and kind of a mindset adjustment for everyone. So I think it'll probably take a little bit of time to reorient yourself to the way that this is working. And I think the most effective way of trying to really conceptualize this is actually working through the submission process. So with that being said, unless there are any other questions, I'm going to move on to start talking about the workflow for each type of submission that you might have to deal with. Okay, so I'm going to start with an OEM submission. In the context of this, we're saying an OEM is the manufacturer who is actually doing the manufacture of the product. They are not a private labeler or multi-lister or whatever other terminology you might be using for somebody who is just buying a product and rebranding it under their name. So for an OEM, the situation is that you're trying to certify a product or group of products that you manufacture and sell. In the early stages of this release of the system, this is going to encompass the process of just getting your products into the database, but once the database is loaded up with everyone's currently certified products in the future, you'll be using this type of submission when you're adding a new product to be certified. So again, just to reiterate, the way that you group products together on a submission is anything that's associated with just one test report. So that could be one product, it could be 100 products. It's just depending on how the testing was done. So if you're creating a new submission, for the purposes of this presentation, we're not going to be doing everything live on the website. We wanted to make sure that the slides we were using would be helpful for future reference. So we are just using screenshots here. If you're able to log in, you can feel free to follow along, but I would encourage you to try to at least look at the screenshots and maybe note where you're going to want to go back and look at the slides again. And the slides will definitely be made available along with the recording of this webinar. So for an OEM submission, you're going to be on the submission page. You're going to click a new certification. There's a button here. Once you click that button, a little pop-up will appear that says new submission. Please select the type of submission. You'll select new certification. Once you click that, you'll click next, and then you will see another drop-down where you have to pick what type of manufacturer you are. In this situation, you're going to select OEM and then hit next again. At that point, the pop-up will change, so you're looking at this little thing at the bottom left of the slide where it's going to give you the ability to download an Excel file that you'll use to fill out and put in your product information. And then once you've put all your product information into the Excel file, you'll save it, and then you'll click this Browse button and click Upload. And you'll click the Upload button, and you'll make sure that there aren't any issues with the submission. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk through the Excel template here, because I know this is all very new for everyone, and I want to make sure we're being very clear. So when you download the Excel template, you'll want to make sure, first of all, that you're saving it to your computer, you're saving any edits you're making, and that you're able to find it so that you can then upload it to the system. So I have an example here that's already filled out for you, but when you first open it, row 3 and then row 12 and beyond will all be blank. So you'll have to click in each individual cell and fill it out. In this first cell, can you guys see my mouse?
Yes. Yes.
Just want to make sure. So when you're looking at the first cell, you're going to click on this drop down. For the time being, the only option here is A156.1, so you'll just select that. You'll select the year of the standard that you tested to and are certifying to. So right now, the only options are 2013 and 2016, so you'll select between those. You'll put in your test lab, which is either Intertech or UL, and then you'll have to fill in the test report number and the test report date that is being used as evidence for your product being certified. We have an optional manufacturer comment field in here that you can fill in with nothing. If you want to leave it blank, you can put something in here that might help you remember something about the submission later on. You can put it in there as a note to your test lab because they will be able to see it. We tried to keep this flexible, so if different manufacturers have different preferences, they can use it however they want to. So in this row here, this is all submission level information, as you can see in the label. So you're only filling out row 3, and all of this information applies to all of the products that you will then fill out below in the product information section. So then for each product will be a separate line item. And just to revisit, remember a product is a unique ANSI number or a unique function number. So in this example, these are just made up products. So we're going to fill in the brand field here, brand series, brand model, brand function number, marketing description, which is optional, ANSI number, and product type options. So I think Tyler's going to talk a little bit more about some of those product fields, but I did want to take some time to talk about the ANSI numbering system, since this is a very central part of this entire database structure. So rather than having everybody fill out individual fields for every single field we have in the database, we chose to structure it so when you're filling out the Excel template, the only thing you're filling out is the ANSI number for the product to say things like how the product performs, what the material is, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very important that you get the ANSI number right for your product. And so I just want to take a little bit of time to walk through the ANSI numbering system for 156.1 to make sure it's very clear for everyone. I hope that since you guys are probably already involved in the testing and you are very familiar with the standard, this shouldn't really be anything new, but I just want to make sure that we've covered it. So I pulled this straight from the standard. This explains how a product is assigned an ANSI number, and I'm just going to walk through it really quick. So what the system will be looking for in terms of what you put in the Excel spreadsheet, it's expecting to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characters. The first character is going to denote the section, which is always going to be A. The second character is the material. So if you put 1, it's going to read it as cast, forged, or extruded brass or bronze. The only options for what you can put in that second character are 1, 2, 5, and 8, because that's what's in the standard. Third character is the type of product. So again, you can only put these options, which are just individual numbers, and then the system will automatically read this for you. So the entire goal here is we wanted to minimize the amount of work that manufacturers have to do in putting in their product information, and also minimize the number of potential mistakes that might happen. The fourth character is the function or description. So you can put in any one of these that apply to your product and it will automatically read it. For the fifth character, or the fourth numeral, it's going to be the grade, so 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then we have an optional sixth character, which is the suffix field. So we have these suffix options that you can put in. So what you'll end up putting in here is something like this. I don't know if this is a real product. I just made this up as an example. So this might be completely wrong, but the way that it's going to read it, I just want to make it clear for you all. So the first character is A. It's going to have section A. 8, it's going to read it as wrought steel, forged steel, cast steel, or malleable iron. 1, it's going to understand it as being a full mortise hinge. For the product description, it's going to be anti-friction bearing. For 2, it's going to be grade 2, and because it has the T as a suffix, it knows it's triple weight. So again, that's how you're filling out the ANSI number, and it's very important that you're getting it right. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off from here to Tyler to go through the rest of the process. Tyler, are you on? And do you want me to just keep clicking through the slides for you?
Yeah, I think that should work. Hi, everybody. Like Erica said, my name is Tyler. I've been working in a support role under Erica at DNR International for the past few months. Today, I'm going to be walking through the remaining there's only a few more steps for the OEM submission type, and then run through the rest of the other submission types, so private label and update/recertification. So if we go to the next slide here, we will see that there are some error messages that are automatic tied to this submission upload. So the template we were just looking at with Erica has certain data validations in the system once you upload that template after clicking browse in this pop-up here. The most obvious of which would be, you see this green section in this pop-up. It's telling you that your user account only has the authorization to submit on behalf of, in this case, 3 brands: brand ABC, manufacturer ABC, and brand XYZ. So one of the data validations inherent in the system is that if you were to, say, put a brand of brand ABC DEF in your Excel template, the system wouldn't allow it. So this is the sort of red text error message that you would see if that mistake or any other similar mistakes were made. If that is not the case and you've perfectly entered all the data in your Excel file and upload it, then the system will accept it. And when you click that bottom right upload button, it will bring you to the next page, which looks like this. So at this point, the system has parsed, like Erica said, all of the information in the ANSI number and automatically filled. I know it's sort of small text there at the bottom, but it's filled out at the bottom right there for all of your products, along with all of the other submission level information you see in the 5 text boxes at the top there, and all of the sort of outward-facing product information like brand, series, brand function number, etc., in the bottom left. So at this point, you're free to make any edits, either to the submission level information or the product level information as needed prior to submitting. You also have the option to add a new product if you forgot to add it in your Excel template. You'll see that little turquoise button in the middle there. So if you were to click any of those rows for the existing products, a little pop-up will appear, allowing you to change anything that you would like prior to submitting. So once you're, there you go. So you can see that pop up there. The fields on the right, you cannot edit because they are being parsed based on the ANSI number you included in your Excel template. So theoretically, there shouldn't be any need for you to need to do so anyway. And as you can see, red asterisks will denote required fields. So when you're happy with all of the submission level and product level information you've entered into this page, you can go ahead and click the submit button in the top right. What this will do is, one, obviously change the status of this submission from draft to awaiting test lab review, and it will prompt the system to send an email notification of your to your specified test lab, either UL or Intertech, that there is a new submission being sent by you that is awaiting their review. And to be clear, once you've submitted a submission, you will not be able to edit any of the information that you were able to prior to submitting. So if you notice any errors, you should contact the test lab directly and ask them to reject the submission so you can make those changes. We already saw this slide, but just to be clear, all of the workflows that Erica and I just described in getting a OEM submission submitted is all being handled by this first box at the top middle here. So submit, manufacturer submits products for certification. At that point, it goes to the test lab. They'll either approve or reject. If it's been approved, it'll go to BHMA staff and so on. So we're going to move on to a private label type submission now. Similar workflow and sort of getting started as it was for the OEM, where you're clicking this plus new button at the top right of your submissions page, and then selecting new certification from the first pop-up dropdown. And then you would click private label instead of OEM. So for some background here, so the context behind when you would do so, you're representing a brand who is looking to certify a private labeled, in other words, multiple listed version of a currently certified OEM product. So again, pretty similar in terms of clicks as it was for the OEM. You will notice that the template for the private label is much simplified as compared to the OEM. So you click your download submission form link, it'll bring you this different template. You'll fill it out, you'll save it, and then browse for it and upload it. So let's take a closer look at this different template for private labels. The only fields included in the private label Excel template are some of those outward-facing, public-facing fields that you saw for the OEM, things like brand, brand series, brand model, brand function number, and then this last field on the right in column F in our screenshot here. It's called OEM parent product code. So every product that is certified on the CPD, once it's certified, will be assigned a alphanumeric string product code. It'll be 6 digits. The expectation for anyone looking to submit a private label submission is that they have some sort of contact with the OEM party in this sort of two-way relationship, who will be providing these product IDs outside of the certification portal somewhere. So not until you have these product codes for the OEM products you're private labeling will you be able to submit a private label submission. Once you do, you'll enter it in these Excel templates, and you can just see here that there are some optional fields, much like there were for the OEM template. So same sort of workflow. I just want to note that there are data validations in place for each of the submission types. That brand ABCDEF example we showed for the OEM, same sort of thing is there for the private label. We just didn't want to add a redundant slide for that. And again, the same thing will be the case for the recertification submission type as well. So the system will look at what product code you entered for your OEM parent and carry over all of the existing data for that parent and assign it to your new prospective private label product. Since those products are functionally the same, apart from sort of these outward-facing fields that you included in your Excel template, all of that data should be identical between your new product and the currently certified product. Much like the OEM submission, you are free to add or revise any outward-facing product information as needed prior to submitting. And again, once you're happy with all of the data on this page, you will click the submit button, and same sort of thing. It'll prompt the system to send an email notification to the test lab that there's a new submission waiting their review. All right, let's move on to the recertification submission type. The workflow in terms of series of clicks is a little bit different for the recertification than it is for the OEM and private label submission type. Just as some background, when you are looking to recertify an OEM product that will expire soon, that's, I think, probably the most common reason you would be submitting a recertification submission. It's also possible that for some reason you would want to update certain information tied to a currently certified product, regardless of whether they're going to expire soon or not. So maybe they're not going to expire for 2 years, but some sort of product level information needs to be updated that doesn't affect the status of that certified product, but you would like it to change in the listing itself. So the workflow here is, again, clicking that new button at the top right. Instead of clicking new certification in the pop-up, you would be clicking update/recertification. At this point, as everyone has sort of alluded to, of course, we only have our one standard, but once we have multiple standards, you would have the option to choose in this drop-down between them. At the moment, we're only at 156.1. So you'll choose that, and then you would choose between the manufacturer type, so OEM or private label again. So you'll see that pop up in the bottom left again. And again, our template for recertification is going to be of a different format than it is for a OEM or a private label. So let's take a look at that in a little more detail. Again, the context behind a recertification submission is that you're looking to update a certified product. Because of that, the template that we decided on for uploading a recertification is effectively just a download of all of the certified products currently listed under your organization. So these two screenshots here are meant to represent one long Excel template. So you'll see column A through G there, and then, or excuse me, sorry, it's very tough to see here. A through G-ish, and then H through K-ish there. So you'll see product level information in the top half and submission level information in the bottom half. It's most likely the case that you would want to filter on one submission you submitted, say 4 years ago or so. So you can do so with that submission code field. Effectively, what you need to do here is delete any rows that you are not looking to update in your submission. So you need to filter down for only the products that you're looking to include in your recertification submission. How you do that, we're relatively, or at least the system is relatively agnostic as to how you do so. But if you were to include, say, all of the products currently certified under your organization in this Excel template, the system is going to think you're looking to update all of the products that are currently certified under your organization, which is probably not going to be what you're actually trying to do. So make sure you're deleting any products you're not looking to recertify, saving that file, and uploading it, much like you would for any other submission type. Again, the subsequent page, barring any error messages that the system may have found with your file, is pretty similar. You'll fill in submission level information, which as default will be blank for recertification. The system won't let you submit your submission here unless you fill those in. So you have to enter in your ANSI standard, your test report number, test report issue date, test lab, and standard year. And it is expected that for a recertification process, you would probably be looking to update product level information for whatever products you're recertifying. So you can do so either in the Excel template that you just uploaded itself, or one by one by clicking on these product rows at the bottom. And again, that's all tied to a workflow prior to submitting. So you can't change anything once you've submitted your submission. Once you're happy with your submission information, save any changes and hit submit, and the email notification will be the same as it is for the other submission types. It'll notify the test lab. So you may be wondering where outside of the system would you be notified of whether a submission is in some way awaiting your review or wants to, have you interact with it in some way. So we have email notifications set up for the following actions. Either a submission is approved by the test lab, submission is rejected by the test lab. Again, according to our workflow, only if a submission is approved by a test lab will it go to BHMA staff, at which point you could get an email notification saying either it's approved or rejected by BHMA staff. And if a submission is approved by BHMA staff, that means your products are certified. We also have an email notification that will let you know about upcoming product expirations, quarterly, and whether products have expired. And that will probably happen as soon as that product has expired. So real quick, if your submission is rejected either by the test lab or by BHMA staff, that user will be prompted to enter in a reason for that rejection. So in this right-hand screenshot here, you can see that text entered. So hopefully whatever text that user enters is detailed enough that you know exactly what you need to do in order to correct that submission and resubmit. Real quickly, we just wanted to go through your resources here. If you do find any bugs or have any suggestions for processing efficiency improvements here, we do have an instruction manual at the top right next to where you would hit log out, and that will open up a PDF that has as detailed or maybe even more detailed instructions than Erica and I have provided here. So if you have any questions about the workflow, we would suggest you click this PDF and see if you can't answer your question yourself using this manual. More often than not, I would expect that this would be the case. And like I said, if you look through that manual and it doesn't solve your question, or if you experience any bugs or issues, we recommend you hit the contact button at the bottom left corner of the page to email Larry, and make sure you include as much detailed information as possible as to what you were doing. Include screenshots and any sort of detailed narrative as to I clicked X, Y, and Z, and the following D, E, and F things happened. As much detail as possible will help get your problem solved efficiently. At this point, I believe we're handing it back to David to discuss next steps and timeline.
Before we talk about the next steps for this whole system, does anybody have questions about the submissions that we talked about, any of the workflows, or any remaining confusion?
Erica, Brian Lindemann from Dormant Capital here. Question: the notifications for expiration say quarterly. Will they be longer for like test standards like closers, for instance, that could be closer to a year if it's got to go 2 million cycles? So, in case manufacturers have a lapse.
So for the time being, the solution that we decided on was we were going to do quarterly notifications for things that would be expiring in the next quarter. I don't think that there was a discussion within the task force about how that would impact the actual testing timeline. So it's possible that it would make sense to do more of a lead time than quarterly. The other option too, if you want to be more proactive rather than waiting for the notification on there, is you can always go log into the system and either look at the submissions page or the product page, and that displays the expiration date for each product. That's something that we might want to consider tweaking later on after the launch has been fully implemented and people start certifying and seeing that maybe that wasn't the best solution that the task force decided on.
All right, thank you, Erica.
Erica, Earl Delph with the Legion. Just a quick question. The actual report date, that is going to be at the month, day, and year as far as the expiration, is that correct?
Correct, yeah. We had some discussions within the task force about whether the 4 years for certification should start at the date of the test report or the date that it is approved by BHMA staff. And the consensus was that people wanted it to be the date of the test report to start that 4-year clock, because we didn't want manufacturers to necessarily have to wait on BHMA staff to approve things by a certain time. I think based on the reading of the standard that I think either staff or the task force did, it seemed like the 4-year requirement is truly around, you have to do testing within 4 years of the original test report date. So that's what we landed on.
Thank you.
Erica, this is Kurt Roper. One question, and once something goes into the various queues, if they're not acted on, is there an escalation or anything built into the system in terms of time fences so something doesn't just get stuck in a queue?
That is a great question. For the time being, we don't have anything that the system has in place to force any one step to happen within a certain period of time. But I can speak to our experiences with other completely separate certifications or certification programs that we have worked on outside of BHMA. And at least for one of the lighting programs we have a lot of experience with, eventually the certification program itself, I think, implemented some rules about how quickly things have to be reviewed. So it was kind of like a policy choice rather than something that was programmed into the system. So for the time being, again, there's nothing programmed into the system that requires something to be reviewed by a certain time. But I think that's something that you should probably talk to with your test lab or with BHMA staff about expectations for how quickly things will get turned around.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
All right, so in terms of next steps moving forward here, as the submission portal is fully operational and functional for A156.1 listings, just a general reminder here again that the deadline to submit all your A156.1 listings in the new submission portal is June 30th, so please be mindful of that. And then in terms of the additional standards here, the CPD task force has organized the review of the remaining standards into specific groupings. You can see that below, groups 2, 3, 4, 5. And then simply moving forward, the CPD task force is going to start the review process for the upload spreadsheet of standards in groups 2. Again, that's A156.8, .15, .19, .29, .38, .39, and .40. And we're going to be doing that, basically organizing ourselves here and reviewing those remaining standards in groups 2 after the BHMA spring meeting, which again is going to be taking place May 14th to 17th in Denver, Colorado. And we'll certainly be sending out additional information about that, communications really in that front in the coming days. And then in terms of, again, as the newly facing public certified directory here, we'll plan to launch that again, as I mentioned earlier, at a later date once we have all the A156.1 product listings that again have been submitted through the new submission portal and then are confirmed up to date. So as a placeholder right now on the newly launched BHMA website, we are still utilizing the old CPD front there, and it's still viewable and usable in its old form. So just to give you a few updates there. I believe that kind of brings us here to the end of our presentation here. We do have some time here, so if anyone has any additional questions or comments, we can certainly take a look at that now.
Hey, David, this is Eric from Legion. I'm looking at this last slide that's pulled up. What is happening on the deadline of June 30th? Are we going to be locked out from inputting any other .1 product on after June 31st? Or June 30th?
Right, so just to kind of backtrack here, the new submission portal is only accepting listings for point 1. We rolled out group 1 or just point 1 here as sort of a proof of concept, if you will. So from now until June 30th, we have the expectation, if you will, for any organization or company that lists point 1 to have that information uploaded in the new submission portal. For other standards that that are listed or grouped rather in groups 2, 3, 4, and 5, we haven't yet gone through the review of the upload spreadsheets for those, so they're not fully functional or accepting, if you will, in the submission portal at this time. And as I mentioned, moving forward, our next task for our CPD task group is to go through the review of the upload spreadsheets for every standard listing in group 2. And we're going to be starting that process and getting ourselves organized immediately following the BHMA spring meeting in Denver, Colorado. And then once we get a handle on that, we'll be pushing out additional communications on timeframes and expectations for those standards and how that will interact and be used rather in the new submission portal at that time.
Thank you.
So while people are maybe thinking about the questions they have or still digesting all this information, there are a couple other things that came to mind for me that I just wanted to reiterate here. So the first thing being, please make sure you have the right settings for your user information to make sure you can access the right place in the certification portal, but also on that piece that Tyler was talking about where it shows you the brands that you have approval for. You have to have the right settings for each brand in the member database to make sure that you're allowed to submit through the system for certification. So if you work for a company that has like 10 different brands that you might be the person who's responsible for submitting for, you want to make sure that you have the right roles in the member database to make sure that you are allowed by the system to submit for all 10 of those brands. the second piece I just want to give a shout out to is the user manual that Tyler mentioned as well. I would very strongly encourage that everybody, before you start using the system, at least read through it. It does have a lot of very specific instructions. In some cases, it does have a little more context and definitions for the types of submissions. So before you go in there and just start jumping in with both feet, I would encourage you to just read through it and make sure you feel comfortable with what you're doing in the system. You can always delete something that you might have done incorrectly, but it's, in my experience, it's always better to try to be a little more cautious when you're using it for the first time rather than making a bunch of submissions and then having to go back and delete them later on. Just the last thing too that I was going to mention is we do have a webinar that is targeted to the test labs that is on Monday. So if you're thinking right now, hey, I really need to talk to Intertech or I really need to talk to UL, you can obviously reach out to them. It's your prerogative, but they might not necessarily have an answer for you until they have their webinar on Monday. So you might want to just give them a couple days to digest themselves as well.
Hi, my name is Claudia Tuttle. I'm from Accurate, and I wanted to ask, are we getting the recording for the webinar in case we wanted to share with anyone within their organization?
Yeah, so we are currently recording the webinar right now, and shortly thereafter this concludes, we'll be making that available to all the participants and anyone else that wasn't able to attend today. So it will be available on the website, and we'll also be sending out that as well.
Yeah, because I did get the email that that they sent, but the one link that was there was linking to, looks like the public-facing website and not the one that you guys have the screenshots. So I'm not sure, is that different or if it's the same link?
Okay, Claudia, I can help you out with that. This is Larry. I can help you out with that.
Okay.
So just contact me and I'll walk you through that.
Okay, great.
This is Roger Skold with National Guard Products. I just wanted to, I guess, affirm a comment that was made earlier about the test cycles that are required. Sometimes 3 months will not be adequate, and if this site is designed to help us manage that, then I would like to see the ability for the user, that's us, manufacturer, to set either a 3-month, 6-month, or even up to a year notification of tests expiring. Hopefully you can accommodate that.
Yeah, we'll circle back with the task force and talk about that particular concern and any other feedback that comes through and make sure that we're addressing them and prioritizing them in the way that is most useful and appropriate for everyone who's going to be using the system. Thank you for reiterating that comment. That's useful for us.
All right, everyone. Well, if no one else has any additional comments or questions, we can certainly, listen and be on the lookout for those offline. We can answer them after this recording here. But we're very excited about the newly designed CPD moving forward, and we'll be sharing some more information about groups 2, 3, 4, and 5 shortly thereafter. So thank you all again for your time and your participation. And again, if you have any questions or comments concluding the webinar, feel free to reach out to staff, and we'll be sure to address them at that time. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.